Who killed Jon Arryn and why? It's one of the biggest mysteries driving the early action in A Song of Ice and Fire, but who actually did it? Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to In Deep Geek. On this channel we cover A Song of Ice and Fire and all of George R.R. Martin's wider world of Ice and Fire, along with The Lord of the Rings and The Witcher. If you're new, welcome. Jon Arryn's death, which happens just before the start of the main story in A Song of Ice and Fire, is one of the key mysteries that drives the action in the first couple of books. Jon was Hand of the King, respected by almost everyone, and trusted by King Robert Baratheon. Then he died. Although he was not a young man, we are encouraged almost immediately to view his death as suspicious, particularly when, like for most of Book 1, we see this from a Stark perspective. Jon Arryn was Ned's foster father and Kat's brother-in-law, so this was personal for the Starks. And straight away we're told that it was murder through a letter from Lysa Arryn, Jon Arryn's wife, to her sister Kat, in code so only she would understand it. We don't read the exact text, but she names Cersei Lannister as having murdered Jon. Kat then pushes Ned to accept the post of Hand of the King and go to King's Landing. Then he can investigate and find out the truth. So that is what Ned is thinking as he heads down south, and what he starts investigating. Did Cersei do it? And if so, why? What possible motivation could Cersei have for killing good old Jon Arryn? Not that Ned needs much persuasion that the Lannisters did it, he already held them in quite low esteem, particularly Jaime, but why? The clues quickly start racking up. Jon's last words, "The seed is strong," that book he had been reading with the hair colours of the children of each noble family, seeing Robert's bastard children and how they had such black hair and looked a lot like him, and the curious case of Sir Hugh of the Vale, Jon Arryn's squire, who was knighted and seemed to come into a lot of money immediately after his death, and was then brutally killed himself by the Mountain, a Lannister loyalist, at the hand's tourney, just before Ned could question him. Ned comes to the conclusion that Jon Arryn had been investigating the parentage of Cersei's children, had discovered about the whole twincest thing, and Cersei had ordered his death, probably paying Sir Hugh of the Vale to poison him while he was Jon's squire, then ordering the Mountain to kill Sir Hugh to cover her tracks. And to be fair to Ned, this is pretty much where the evidence he had led. Jon had been investigating the parentage of Cersei's children. Varys had confirmed that Jon had been poisoned using the tears of Lys, and said it must have been someone close to Jon, hinting heavily that it might have been Hugh. And Sir Hugh had undeniably mysteriously come into some money. Littlefinger pushes Ned towards this conclusion, and we learn later that even Pycelle thought that this is what happened. And Ned confronts Cersei about it all, being the honourable if rather naive man that he is. But interestingly, during that confrontation, he never actually accuses her to her face of killing Jon Arryn, instead leaving it implied, so we'd never actually see her reaction to that. The closest he gets is to say that, "I know the truth Jon Arryn died for," to which she responds by rather warily accusing him of speaking in riddles. And then the conversation turns swiftly to the bigger issue of Cersei's children and what Ned is going to do with the knowledge that they are Jaime's, not Robert's. Through it all, Ned assumes she ordered Jon's death to cover her tracks, but she never actually admits anything like that, despite being very open about everything else. And the pattern of the wider story then follows the pattern of that conversation. Anyone who thinks about it just assumes that's what happened, and it gets rather overtaken by events. But then Tyrion starts to investigate. First, he gets accused of doing it himself by Lysa Arryn, which he finds a bit odd. Then, when he gets to King's Landing, he asks Cersei to her face, "Who murdered Jon Arryn?" Cersei yanked her hand back. "How should I know?" The grieving widow in the Eyrie seems to think it was me. Where did she come by that notion, I wonder? "I'm sure I don't know. That fool Eddard Stark accused me of the same thing. He hinted that Lord Arryn suspected, or, well, believed." They go on to discuss twincest, but although, again, she doesn't exactly deny murder, she is still rather dismissive of the notion. Then Tyrion raises the matter with Littlefinger, while they happen to be discussing Lysa Arryn, Jon's widow. Littlefinger starts, "I understand she hates you. She believes she has good reason. When I was her guest in the Eyrie, she insisted that I'd murdered her husband and was not inclined to listen to denials. He leaned forward. If I gave her Jon Arryn's true killer, she might think more kindly of me. That made Littlefinger sit up. True killer? I confess you make me curious. Who do you propose? It was Tyrion's turn to smile. Gifts I give my friends freely. Lysa Arryn would need to understand that. So Tyrion hints to Littlefinger that he knows who really killed Jon Arryn, which seems to rattle him slightly. Then Tyrion questions Pycelle, or, well, interrogates him really. Shagga the mountain clansman is on hand to provide muscle. Jon Arryn was sending his wife back to the Eyrie, and his son to be fostered on Dragonstone. He meant to act. So you poisoned him first? No, Pycelle struggled feebly. Shagga growled and grabbed his head. The clansman's hand was so big he could have crushed the maester's skull like an eggshell had he squeezed. Tyrion tusked at him. I saw the tears of Lys among your potions, and you sent away Lord Arryn's own maester and tended him yourself, so you could make certain that he died. Yes, he whimpered. Yes, Coleman was purging, so I sent him away. The Queen needed Lord Arryn dead. She did not say so, could not. Varys was listening, always listening, but when I looked at her, I knew. It was not me who gave him the poison, though. I swear it. The old man wept. Varys will tell you. It was the boy, his squire. Hugh, he was called. He must surely have done it. Ask your sister. Ask her. So Pycelle thought Cersei was behind the poisoning, and so he just let Jon Arryn die rather than treat him. But by this point we are already pretty sure Cersei didn't do it. We get our final confirmation in the last proper chapter of A Storm of Swords. It's from Sansa's point of view, and we see Lysa Arryn talking to Littlefinger, or sobbing at him. Tears, 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 she sobbed hysterically. No need for tears. But that's not what you said in King's Landing. You told me to put the tears in Jon's wine, and I did, for Robert, and for us. And I wrote to Catelyn and told her the Lannisters had killed my lord husband, just as you said. So Lysa definitely killed her husband because Littlefinger told her to. We should take a moment to acknowledge that although this was an horrendous act, she was clearly not of sound mind at the time and under Littlefinger's influence. But now we can piece it all together. When confessing, Lysa says she did it for Robert as well as for Littlefinger. That's her son Robin Arryn, Sweet Robin, not Robert Baratheon. What is he to do with all this? Well, Jon Arryn was planning to send Sweet Robin off to be fostered by Stannis Baratheon. Robert Baratheon also later thought he could be fostered by Tywin Lannister, and Lysa would do anything not to lose her child. Littlefinger suggested the way to stop all this was for Jon to die and Lysa to escape back to the safety of the Eyrie with Sweet Robin. Perhaps Littlefinger here was also planning ahead and getting Lysa's husband out of the way. He knew that she would want to marry him, and that would make him even more powerful. Littlefinger procures a poison and gives it to her, which she uses. Perhaps Pycelle might have been able to save Jon Arryn's life, but we'll never know, because he thought it was Cersei who had done it, and so he did nothing. Pycelle is a Lannister loyalist, after all. And in the meantime, Littlefinger saw an opportunity to stir the pot a bit more and create some chaos. He always backed himself to advance during chaos. He got Lysa to write to Cat telling her that Cersei did it. Cat would believe her sister Lysa, and Ned would surely soon be heading down to King's Landing to become Hand of the King. Littlefinger could set the Starks and Lannisters against each other. Littlefinger then carefully pushes Ned to find evidence that provides a motive for Cersei to kill Jon Arryn. Remember, Ned isn't looking for evidence she did it. He's already been told that she did, just an understanding of why. And we probably have to give Littlefinger a bit of credit here. He did cover his tracks well. Most of the major players in King's Landing assumed it was Cersei. Incidentally, Sir Hugh of the Vale, remember him, was mostly a red herring. He wasn't involved at all, and his death wasn't a Lannister hit job. Perhaps Littlefinger lent him the money for a deposit for a horse and armour. Perhaps he manipulated the lists so Sir Hugh would be facing the Mountain. But George R. R. Martin has confirmed that the Mountain needed no reason to kill Sir Hugh. Sir Barristan noted that Hugh wasn't ready to be a knight, and the Hound noticed that his gorget hadn't been tied properly, and the Mountain was just a sadistic brute of a man. And if you're wondering why Lysa confuses things by accusing Tyrion, not Cersei, of the murder when he is her prisoner, well, we don't know for sure. Perhaps she just got a bit confused, or couldn't remember exactly what she'd said in her note to Cat. Later she just talks about the Lannisters having done it, not Cersei specifically, but it was probably just her opportunistically trying to cover her own back. She obviously knew that she had done it, but if Tyrion was tried and found guilty of it in the eyes of gods and men, then that would be the official truth of the matter from then on. It didn't work, but you can see the logic. And after questioning most of the key players, perhaps Tyrion had figured all this out. He certainly hinted to Littlefinger that he had, and perhaps Littlefinger responded by getting Mandon Moore to try to kill Tyrion in the Battle of the Blackwater. I did another video on that if you're interested. But regardless, as far as Littlefinger was concerned, the biggest weak link in all this plotting was Lysa. Littlefinger had to use her for this, but she wasn't exactly stable. Which leads us to why this matters in the long run. Yes, the mystery was one of the things that sparked the whole war in the first place, but there's a chance it may also play a big role later in the story. Littlefinger may think that he has covered himself by killing Lysa and dealing with Marillion the minstrel who had witnessed what happened, but there is one other witness to Lysa's confession, Sansa. And what a way this would be to round off Littlefinger's story. We often think of Littlefinger's story arc needing to come round to vengeance from the Starks for what he did to them, but it's also a Tully story. He killed Lysa and defamed Cat, and an Arryn story too. It is Jon Arryn who was killed, after all. There would be some poetic irony if the cause of his ultimate downfall is not just a Stark, but a Tully, and Sansa is the most Tully-like of all the Starks, and someone from the Vale. And Littlefinger currently seems to be plotting to marry Sansa to Harry the heir to the Vale. Jon Arryn's murder is not just a starting point for the action in the story, it may well be the end for one of the most cunning and manipulative characters to play the Game of Thrones. If or when Sansa ever reaches a safe place, she now knows the secret that can bring him down. Eventually, Littlefinger's lies and his creepy obsession with Sansa preventing him from killing her will catch up with him. If you'd like more videos diving into George R. R. Martin's world of Ice and Fire, there's a playlist on the left of your screen now. Or if you want to support this channel, thank you. The best way to do that is via Patreon, which is the link on the right of your screen. That's all for this time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.